What is up, guys, and happy Easter weekend. Also, I hope everyone out there is hanging in there if you got young kids at home. I know how these long weekends can be, but this is a review, 100-mile review of the Asics Superblast. It is also, and this might get me canceled in the running community and the running shoe community and the gear enthusiast community, but this is also going to be a safe space for all of us out there who found that the Superblast didn't help us pay off our mortgage. It didn't make us a 105 half marathoner, and it didn't feel like the best shoe we ever laced up in our entire lives. So this video, for everybody out there who ran in the Superblast and didn't have a euphoric, life-changing experience, this is for you guys. My name is Joanna. I live in North Carolina. I run 100 miles per week sometimes. What's your name? Where are you from? How many miles a week do you run? But this video is going to be for all of us out there who ran in the shoe and didn't feel like it was the greatest thing since Morton gels, because I've put 100 miles on this thing now, right? I've done long runs, I've done short runs, I've done slow runs, I've done fast runs, I've done stroller runs, I've done aerobic base building runs, I've done treadmill runs, and 100 miles, my typical run length is probably from 8 to 12 miles. So let's say, I didn't count, but probably around 10 runs in this shoe. And I think for 2 of them, so the 20% of those runs, the shoe felt good. For the rest of them, it was a really confusing experience. So in this video, I'm going to break down my experience with the shoe, the things I liked, the things I didn't like, and hopefully some of you guys out there who've been getting criticized, castigated, ostracized from the running shoe community will feel at home here on this channel. All right, guys, so the Asics Superblast here is Asics Max cushioned shoe. It is non-plated, and the secret sauce is that it has 45 millimeters of stack here in the forefoot of this racing foam FF Turbo. That's what makes it such an exciting shoe for a lot of people out there. And that's also the same thing that made it a weird shoe for me. So the secret sauce, again, is the stack. And that means up in the forefoot, because you have 45 back here, you have 38 millimeters of stack in the forefoot. And so this is a shoe where you put it on, you go for a run, no matter the pace, there is no ground feel whatsoever. This absorbs any type of feeling that you might get from the ground. It doesn't give you a connected experience, and it does have a nice bounce to it. It has a nice slight roll to it, but because you're getting so much foam, for me personally, I could get the feeling like I was fighting against the foam at times, and it wasn't the optimal shoe for my stride. Now, this shoe comes in at $200, which is one of the controversial things about it. I think that's also one of the reasons why people love it so much, and I don't need to break down to you guys how pricing works. You know how premium pricing works, right? A company makes something more expensive, that can make it more desirable in the eyes of consumers. And so this wasn't the first shoe to use the non-plated super foam, or this wasn't the first shoe to use that non-plated racing foam. The Nike Invincible here, I believe, was the first shoe to do it. This is the Invincible 3, but Invincible 1 was the shoe that did it. But this guy took it to the next level by adding all that stack and still keeping it at a pretty lightweight. This comes in at around 260 grams for my US men's 11 here, which is a lot lighter than any of the other max cushion shoes, which typically come in at around 290 to 300 grams. I did this comparison yesterday when we were weighing the Invincible 3 here. So Superblast, lightweight shoe, tons of foam. You get that racing foam, so you get some nice bounce and you get some nice pop, but it's not going to give you any sort of ground contact experience. So the reason that this has been such a confusing shoe for me is because, and I'm actually gonna pause this video for you all, and I want you to complete the sentence. Drop it in the comments below. If you have run in the Asics Superblast, please complete the sentence. The Asics Superblast is my favorite shoe for blank. Now I'm gonna pause that for a few seconds. I'll let you think. Maybe I'll spit a little rap for you. Superblast, we're running super fast. Is it a recovery shoe or for those tempo days? Salmon so bright, it hurts my gaze. All right, drop below. The Asics Superblast is my favorite shoe for blank. Now, for me, that was the reason why I never really fell in love with the shoe through 100 miles. I couldn't find what it's best for. And before coming to this shoe, I was running a lot in the Asics Nova Blast, which is a little bit of a little brother to this guy. It doesn't have the FF Turbo Foam. It uses the FF Blast. So you see here on the bottom layer, we do have this FF Blast Plus foam, which is more of Asics standard training foam than the racing foam on top. So the Nova Blast, let me go grab that real quick. We got all the shoes over here. We even got the kids' shoes over here. And dinner. And you can see what else I was planning to compare it to. Also, shout out to the Japanese maple over there just blooming. Asics is a Japanese company, so you know we had to get that shot. All right, so we got the Nova Blast now. So before I was running in the Super Blast, I spent a lot of time in the Nova Blast. I nearly did a 100-mile week with it. I think it took probably 10 days to get 100 miles on this guy, but much different ride experience in the Super Blast. And I actually did a head-to-head comparison of these, which I will link below if I don't fall asleep while editing the video. Maybe I'll add a note up here confirming if I actually included it in the description. But the Nova Blast here, for me, hit a little bit better for the intended purpose. And with this guy, I couldn't figure out the intended purpose. That's why I'm asking you to tell me what's your favorite for. But for this guy, the intended purpose is clear. So you also get a lot of stack, 42 millimeters in the heel back here. And its brief is to keep you feeling protected over long miles. And every time I laced up the shoe, without fail, in the first 20 minutes of the run, I would be telling myself, why am I wearing this shoe? And then as I got to the 30-minute mark, 40-minute mark, and then past an hour, it started feeling amazing. So you get a ton of protection from this FF Blast Plus foam, and you get a nice little bit of bounce up here from this trampoline pod effect up in the forefoot. When hitting certain paces for me, it felt really nice. This is definitely at my paces and for my mechanics, not a workout shoe. It was more of a recovery running and protective daily trainer, but I absolutely loved it. And you get a ton of cushion out in the back. And so as I was singing the praises of the Nova Blast 4 here on the channel, a lot of you guys were telling me, bro, you got to try the Super Blast because it's going to put the Nova Blast to shame. You're going to be embarrassed you even talked about the Nova Blast on the Supwell channel. So I bought the Super Blast, and it wasn't exactly that big brother that I thought it was going to be. To the Nova Blast, it was a little bit of a different ride experience. It is a lighter shoe on foot. It definitely feels lighter on foot. The upper is a little bit lighter weight. You have more of a race fitting upper on this guy. This is a lot more padded, but all the extra stuff that I'm getting in here, all the bells and whistles don't make it for me, didn't make it for me through that 100 miles. A better shoe for running fast, and for $200, that's really going to be what you need to be getting out of this shoe to get the most benefit out of it. Because if you want a nice recovery shoe or a nice comfort-oriented max cushion cruiser, there are so many great ones on the market, right? This is one that I recently brought in, and this is going to come with a huge asterisk because I only have 4 miles on this 30-minute recovery run. So basically throw out everything I'm about to say, but this was a really comfortable shoe right up there with the New Balance 1080 V13 for me. Much more comfortable than the Asics Superblast. And then another one here, which I'll dive into more in a little bit, that I love for those slow days, just cruising, not necessarily slow, but days where I don't want to look at my watch, don't want to worry about pace. This is a great shoe as well. You do have the fuel cell racing foam, the last generation of it, and it's not 100% confirmed whether this is the same compound as the SC Elite V3 racing shoe, probably not, but then you do get the full carbon fiber plate. And so Super Blast here, no carbon fiber plate. That's supposed to be one of the benefits of it. Same thing as a Nova Blast, no plate, non-plated daily trainer, non-plated, I stumbled there. Non-plated what? Non-plated do-it-all shoe. But you don't get, for me, I didn't get the benefit of not having a plate or having a plate. And it seemed like the massive amount of stack that you're getting in the shoe was more of a gimmick than it was a benefit. And so the reason a lot of runners love the shoe is because it doesn't have a plate. But for me, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot and starting to talk about a little bit more with you guys, is there's no reason to ditch plated shoes and go for something like a Super Blast, or go for a plated shoe over a non-plated shoe if the ride isn't what you're looking for, or if the ride isn't what you're expecting it to be. And so Super Blast here, I think, actually could have benefited from having a plate. That would have probably eliminated a little bit of that feeling where I'm fighting against the foam and I can't dig in deep enough in the forefoot to get that fast running experience that I want. And so if we think about a shoe like the New Balance SC Trainer V2 right here, if this guy didn't have a plate, it would 100% give me that feeling where I'm fighting against the foam. and I can't move forward. But with the plate here, even though this is a super soft shoe, anytime I did strides in it, or I even did, I think, a 20-mile workout a few months ago where I did a mile on, mile off at marathon pace, it felt peppy enough because of the carbon fiber plate. And so this is a firmer foam. And again, that's one of the things that took probably 50 miles to soften up. And even at that point, 50, 60, 70 miles, I think it was the Blast 4 video I did comparing these two, it still felt like it wasn't exactly what I needed. And I think the plate would have given it that pop and a little bit more of that response that I wanted for running fast. So those are some of the things that made it a confusing shoe for me. I didn't fall in love with it like many of you thought I would and hoped I would and expected I would. I'm really excited for the Superblast 2 to come out because that's going to change the FF Turbo for FF Turbo Plus. And in the Asics Metaspeed Edge and Sky Paris, those have that new foam, and in the Sky Paris, that was an amazing shoe. So I think the Superblast 2 with that is going to be great. But now let's talk about some of the good things with the Superblast, some of the things that I enjoyed that a lot of runners will enjoy out of this shoe. So first thing, again, this is one of the things that made it a weird and confusing shoe for me, but the amount of foam you're getting here makes it a super protective shoe, and that's what all these shoes that I brought out here have in common. Blast 4, Invincible, SC Trainer V2, and with these max cushion shoes, somebody asked me, is it okay to run in a max cushion shoe as a daily trainer? Is it okay to do workouts in a plated racing shoe or something like the Superblast? And for me, the way I try to manage my rotation, even though I am testing a lot of shoes and I don't always have a choice now what I'm running in because I want to highlight certain, I do have a choice, but if you guys want me to highlight something, I'm going to highlight it. But the way that I'm thinking about it is, if we're running in different shoes, different types of shoes throughout the year, that will help round out all our muscle groups and also our skills as a runner, because studies have shown that the best thing we can do to prevent injuries when it comes to the gear is to rotate between different types of shoes. So if you want to run in a Superblast or a Blast, something super protective for every day, that's great. I would just make sure, and especially as we get into the spring and summer, make sure we're mixing in a lower stack shoe like a Rebel V4, a Topo Cyclone 2. I'm really excited to get some more miles in those two shoes after my next marathon, but that's how I'm thinking about it right now. So really awesome protection here. Every time I laced it up, my legs did feel fresh after, so that's a huge benefit. Second is the fit, and let's do a little bit of a fit comparison after this, but this is a very comfortable upper, super lightweight on foot, and as a few of you have mentioned, it does disappear once you put it on, and other than the foam feeling a little bit weird at certain paces, or at most paces for me, it's not a shoe that was uncomfortable or bothersome to have. It didn't hurt my feet. And even SC Trainer V2, some of you guys have mentioned that there was weird fit with the upper, something was hurting you. Again, this shoe right here too, right? Invincible 3, there's some issues with the heel. I've had very few runners report any sort of fit or feel issues with the Superblast. I certainly didn't have any weird fit with this guy. Super comfortable upper, nice and roomy, and great step and feel. I also did a walking test in this guy, and it was amazing for that. I took it to some sort of, Oceanographic Center down in Florida, and it was a super comfortable shoe for that. So another huge benefit for the Superblast, and the upper is very lightweight. Now, third benefit of the Superblast, third thing that I really liked was the amount of stability that you're getting. And if you take a look at the Invincible 3 here, I can't believe I missed the opportunity to highlight the caboose on this thing. Look at that wagon, but someone else dropped it in the comments, so I was happy that you guys didn't let that one go by. But this guy's got a caboose too. It's hanging off the back here. Not the biggest caboose I've seen, but that means you're going to get some more stability, and if you are a heel striker, you're going to get some great protection again and some roll forward. This was great for heel striking. It felt the same, a little bit weird, but it felt the same amount of weird at every pace. No, I'm just kidding. It felt okay at every pace for me, which is not something in every foot strike as well. So back, middle, front, that's not something that I can say for every shoe. For example, Blast and Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, some of these shoes that have this disconnected feeling can feel a little bit slappy when you land a certain way or at certain paces. There was none of that in the Superblast. So smooth and stable. So look at this width here. That's something that Asics does a really nice job at. So look at both of these shoes. Nova Blast is super wide as well. That's going to give you a lot of stability. And this is a design trend we're seeing across the market now, especially in these max cushion shoes, where you get this nice, not only the caboose, but you get some girth to it. So nice and girthy back end here across all these max cushion shoes. I think the SC Trainer V2 probably has the least girthsome back end. It's a little bit narrower, but because this guy does have the carbon fiber plate, that's going to add some stability. All these guys are non-plated, so if you don't have the plate, it becomes more important to add some width, which the Superblast does, and does really well. I think this would be a great shoe as a workout shoe or a daily trainer if you need stability and you get along with a lot of foam. So that's the key thing. Again, not to circle back to the downsides because I'm trying to highlight the benefits here, but if you don't like a lot of foam, not going to be a great shoe for you. And as we're going on and on about the positives, let's take a look at the outsole, because that was another thing I was super pleasantly surprised at, and I actually hadn't taken a look at the outsole in a few days. And take a look at that. I said take a look twice. That's not good shoe reviewing. Take a gaze, take a gander at the foam back here. It is in really good shape, and Asics gives you a nice thick layer of it. Same thing as in the Nova Blast, and I think these two shoes could go to 400 miles easily. I've heard reports of runners taking their Superblast to 750 km. I don't know what that converts to. Maybe I'll throw it up there. I really want to memorize all the conversions: pace, mileage, ounces to grams, so I can switch between European and American super easily. But in American, I think you could get 400 miles out of either of these guys. In European, I think that's 700 to 800 kms. We are starting to see some wear on this bottom foam, this FF Blast Plus foam, but this is protecting. It's almost its second outsole. So you got the firm foam on the bottom, or the firm rubber on the bottom, the firm foam on top of the rubber, and then you get the softer layer of foam, the more exciting layer of foam, that FF Turbo on the top. So a little bit of wear into that foam, but not too big of a deal because of how great shape the rubber is in. Now, Nova Blast here, and this is not a Superblast Nova Blast comparison, but I have to mention this. This has one of the worst wet weather grips I have ever experienced in a running shoe. I typically don't even notice whether I have good or bad grip in the rain. I don't know why. Maybe I have better feet for gripping the ground or something. I don't know. But this is one of the only shoes where I actively noticed bad grip. It was like ice skating. A lot of you guys watched that video. I think it was the Mach 6 Nova Blast comparison video. I will link that one again. If I don't fall asleep, it'll be down there. I'll confirm in the description. But this guy had terrible rubber grip. This one was okay. I didn't take it in anything torrential, but I did do a few stroller runs where it was rainy. I ran through some wet patches when we were down in Florida with this shoe, and it performed decently. So I think it's a different grip than the Nova Blast 4 here, and a much better grip in the wet, so that's a positive as well. It's going to be okay grip, probably not the best out there, but not as terrible as this guy, and the durability is going to be great. And now if we're thinking about the foam durability here, because it took 50, 60 miles to break in, and I don't know if it ever really broke in because I still don't love how it feels, but these foams that take a longer time to break in and to soften up, not these foams that feel great out of the box, right? Both of these guys here feel amazing out of the box, and then that kind of plummets. Its mileage goes up, amazingness goes down. It's one of those graphs. These softer foams can be like that a little bit. These firmer foams though, and specifically this FF Turbo and then the Light Strike Pro and Adidas shoes, that softens up. It becomes better with time. It becomes friendlier with miles. And so these types of foams that do that will also have better durability. So again, this is a shoe not just with the outsole rubber, but with the foam that you can get tons of miles in. So if you like it, that's going to be a great thing. If you don't like it, then you're stuck with an expensive shoe that you have to run in for 2 years. Now, $200. We have to talk about value, unfortunately. And so if we take a look at the lineup I brought out here today, these are some of the shoes that I prefer running in to the Superblast. And these two over here, I'd be hard pressed to find anybody who didn't enjoy the ride experience of the midsole setup here. And I know with the SC Trainer V2, some people can get what I got out of the Superblast, actually, where they feel like they're fighting against the foam. But for the most part, for just cruising, not worried about pace, lots of runners love the SC Trainer V2. And then similar thing with the Nike Invincible, the Zoom X foam, super soft, super bouncy. The critique of this guy, and the problem that a lot of people have, is the heel lockdown. Problem with this guy is, again, some people have upper issues and the durability. But if we're thinking about value, I got this for $140. This shoe is on sale anywhere from $130 to $150. And then Nova Blast, though it is a little bit of a less refined ride than the Superblast, but still amazingly protective, this guy retails for $140. So Superblast rarely ever goes on sale. Asics doesn't really ever run sales. So the value here is going to be you have to pay MSRP. And it's a little bit of a gamble if you don't like that super stacked feeling. And so if you are a runner who loves that super stacked feeling, maybe you're a bigger runner who can get more benefit out of this foam, or you just like being really protected on your everyday miles and can get that bounce and pop, and the magic hits for you with the Superblast, then it's going to be a great shoe because you can get 450, 500 miles out of it if you really want to. Also, if you plan on racing in it, and that's another thing we should mention, use case here, maybe someone in the comments who did my fill in the blanks, who did my Mad Libs, will say Superblast is my favorite shoe for racing. But if you plan to race in the shoe, that makes the value even better. And that's what a lot of you guys were highlighting when I first brought the shoe on the channel. The value proposition becomes stronger the more types of runs that you do in the Superblast. And that's where I struggled with it for me, because it wasn't the best at any one thing. All the other shoes I have out here, and it's hard to say with the Invincible 3 because it's early, but I will say with the SC Trainer V2 and the Nova Blast 4, both of these two had one thing they were great at that I would prefer them over anything else. For the SC Trainer V2, that was those recovery days, those days where I wanted something a little bit more fun but wasn't worried about pace at all. I would pull for the SC Trainer V2. For the Nova Blast 4, if I was going 90 minutes and I didn't want a lot of assistance, but I wanted something that would dead in any of that harsh impact from the ground and also be really comfortable, because look at this padding here, man. This is a very comfortable shoe. Then I'll go for the Nova Blast 4. With the Superblast, unless you're going to be using it for a ton of run types, it's not going to be the best value shoe. I said the same thing about the Cloud Monster Hyper. You got to be using it for everyday runs, workouts, and maybe even races if you're super concerned about value per dollar, if you want to maximize the benefit of the shoe. So before I do my final wrap up and get into who this is best for, I want to do a fit and feel test, get this on foot real quick. So as I mentioned, one of the things I really loved about the Superblast was how this fits, how it feels on foot, that step-in comfort, the toe box, and the upper in general. So super lightweight upper. This is one of the lightest weight training uppers that I've seen. You get a nice amount of padding in the back, but it's not too crazy. I've seen racing shoes like the Diodor Agara and maybe even the SCLE V4 that have a similar amount of padding. This probably has a little bit more than the SCLE V4. But then the upper here is super light. Look at this. It's like that Creole Jacquard, as Hoka says. And yeah, the toe box here. So I got a size 11. I typically wear a 10.5, but I love the tiny bit of extra room I get in this. My feet are not squished at all. Asics does have nice and forgiving toe boxes. So let's take a look at the Invincible against this just so we can see. And right away, even before I slip my foot in here, I can see the midfoot on the Invincible and the toe box, the way it tapers, is going to be a little bit more narrow. And so that's the key benefit of the Superblast 2. Comfortable upper, and it's interesting having these both on foot. Man, Superblast has a ton more foam right under the forefoot here. It's funny because I ran in the Invincible yesterday and walked in it, and it didn't feel unstable at all. But putting the shoe on and having the Superblast on my other foot, it feels so wiggly, so wobbly, and Superblast just feels absolutely planted and locked down on the ground. So super stable shoe. But yeah, quick view out in the back here. You can see nice lockdown. I don't have any space here. There's also no rubbing with the heel whatsoever. And then on the tongue here, it's not super padded, but there's no weirdness, and I don't feel any lace bite. So I think upper is probably my favorite thing about the shoe. Unfortunately, that might be pay $200 for a good upper, but that might be one of the downsides but positives of the shoe. The upper is great. Midsole for me was just okay. And in the words of AT&T, just okay is not okay. Let's pop this thing off and get into who this is best for. So who is the Asics Superblast best for? Now, despite my confusion with this shoe, I can tell you there were some runs where I really enjoyed it, and those properties that made it a great shoe were how much foam we get underneath it, how lightweight it is, and how stable it is. So if you're a type of runner who wants one shoe to do it all, you need some stability, you want a lot of protection, you don't want to feel any ground feel, this is going to be a great shoe for you. And now I know there's flocks of runners out there, probably 90% of the runners who run in this shoe love it. So there is a good chance if you buy the shoe for $200, you will absolutely love it. That wasn't the case for me. I just found it okay. But if you want something to cruise through a lot of miles, if you're in marathon training or you want something to increase your mileage, Superblast would be a great choice. So this fits into that category of max cushion protective shoes that make the work of running a little bit easier. And even though I felt that I was fighting against the foam at some times, this is going to be a much better shoe for keeping you protected and giving you a little bit of assistance versus a shoe like New Balance Rebel V3 or V4 or something like a Nike Pegasus, Brooks Ghost, any of those more standard daily trainers or any of those shoes that don't have a plate that are below 35 millimeters in stack. They're not going to give you the same benefit as this shoe. So that's going to be who this is best for, regardless of weight or pace. This is going to work well if you want protection, you want something to help you increase mileage, and you want to do it all type of shoe. Now, if you don't need a lot of protection, maybe you're only going up to 30 minutes on your runs, or you're not in a super high mileage period of training, you probably don't need a shoe like the Superblast, and at $200, it is a bit of an investment. So if you're doing 30-minute treadmill runs or doing 5 miles a few times a week, something like the Superblast or even Invincible is probably a little bit of overkill. There's much better value shoes at that $140 mark. If you want some of that protection, but you don't need all this FF Turbo, you don't need the racing foam to give you all that bounce, you could go for something like the Nova Blast 4, or you could go for something like the Hoka Mach 6, which is one of my surprising, I don't know if it's surprising because I love the Mach 5 too, but that's one of my new favorites this year as well. So you don't need to spend $200 to get something for shorter runs if you want just a little bit of pop or you want a little bit of protection. That's where shoes like the Nova Blast 4 or Hoka Mach 6 come in. All right, guys, so those are my thoughts on the Asics Superblast after 100 miles. I'm not sure we're going to see this guy get to the 200-mile club, honestly. I might be getting rid of this, so stay tuned for that. Yeah, after hitting the century mark, I gotta say, Nova Blast, not as fun, but a little bit better at the job that I wanted it to do. Invincible, can't talk too much about this guy yet, but SC Trainer V2, this is probably the shoe I would take for those days where I just want to cruise, maybe pick up the pace here and there. I know not everyone is comparing it head-to-head with this guy, and maybe we'll do a head-to-head comparison, but I think this shoe still has the crown for me for not looking at the watch days where you want a little bit of extra pep. 1080 V13, another New Balance shoe, is the crown for true recovery where you don't want any pep, but a little bit of pep in the step, but feeling nice and protected. SC Trainer V2 is still that shoe, and I know people take this for half marathon races and marathon races. Some guy told me he ran a 2:48 in it, so awesome shoe for a lot of different stuff too. This is still probably my pick in this category of max protection with a little bit of speed, and then Boston 12 would be my speedy marathon training shoe. So those are my thoughts after 100 miles, guys. Let me know why I'm wrong in the comments. I'm sure you will. I don't have to prompt you for that. And let me know, fill in the blanks. Asics Superblast is my favorite shoe for. I am really curious. All right, guys, I'll be back tomorrow with another video.